take a minute, talk with people around you. What is something that you recognize off the bat from marking those correct answers? Talk to people around you. Ready, set, go.
I can tell. I got wrong for a second guess, but I can tell the ones I did first, the ones I did first, and the ones I got right. Like the essays I did first, but you could tell I was like, okay, I was like focused, and then the one I got to at the end, I was like, brain stuff.
Yeah, I missed almost none on like the ones at the end that I did first.
The ones at the end that I did first, I was like, good. The one, and then like the very first essay that I did last, I was like every other. I would either mark it as the distractor, or I would talk myself out of it, or circle it, erase it, and then
Yeah, I hate that because I noticed that like I'm really comfortable with like editing and revising. When you see like rhetorical analysis, no, never been good at that.
I was just being stupid.
I forgot to mark which ones I put in my roll sheet on the two that I went down to zero. So I have no idea whether or not I got those right or not.
All right. Talk to me. What are some things, without even analyzing anything, that you notice?
My writing was higher.
Okay, so you got more correct in the writing portion. Okay, good.
A lot of the ones that I marked as my second ended up being the right one.
Okay, that's the whole reason. 11 of them. I had somebody in the last class that out of the 25 she missed, 17 were her second her second choice was correct. So listen to me. This is why we do APMC analysis all year. This is where it really kind of starts to count, right? Because when you choose to do your questions, the very first ones you need to go to in each category are those. The ones that your second choice was the correct answer and you chose the wrong one. Because you need to analyze in there, what is that trend that I can fix, right? Is it a distractor? Did I misread the choice that I chose? Is there something in the choice that I chose that is very obviously not the correct answer, right? How many times did you do that? If you can pick up half of those, if you did it more, like if you're in double digits in that and you can pick up half of those, that's a great sign. That will help you to get to the next point score. All right, what else?
definitely should have started on the rhetorical analysis, because I realized like the ones I did first I definitely did a lot better on and was like more focused, because the ones I got to towards the end I was just like every other one was wrong, or it was like my second
Did you
choice.
start with writing?
Yeah.
But writing's much easier than rhetorical analysis, so that's not necessarily the thing, plus you have other things going on.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, like Nathan said, like writing is a little bit easier, right? So a couple of things that I think that we can recognize. How many of you started with the writing section in the mock exam? How many of you feel like it like you picked up time in the rhetorical analysis? So I think we have two options. One, instead of going 12 minutes per passage, I think it's safe for us to say 15 minutes for rhetorical analysis, so 15, and then 10 for writing for each one. Most of us probably finish each writing passage in around 9-10 minutes, right? So if you can pick up that time there, and that's why I'm saying start there, because one, manage your time 12 minutes no matter what. If you get ahead on that and you start with writing, then you're good. You just look at how much time you have left and you divide it in half for your rhetorical analysis passage, right? But I think for the most part, I would rather take my full 12 minutes in the writing section and get those more correct there, and then figure out my 12 minutes for my rhetorical analysis. Now that I know what question stems I tend to miss in rhetorical analysis, and not spend my time on those questions, but finding the questions that I tend to get right in rhetorical analysis. Do you see what I'm saying? So we've really got to analyze quite a bit in this section, okay? here's the other thing. So looking at this, and this is new for us, like our questions, our old rhetorical analysis, or our old multiple choice questions were all rhetorical analysis. So we had 4 to 5 passages, 55 questions, right? We had like 6 categories, question categories. So when we would work through, the majority of our questions would come from the 2 hardest categories that were inferencing and author's purpose. Those are those big ideas that you're having to like figure out, like read in between the lines, right? It is pretty even keel here, right? To where all your questions come from. What I found interesting though, looking through, is look at how many of the same question type were in a row multiple times, okay? So what you want to do is you want to look at those and say 13, 14, 15. Did I get all those correct? Or did I get the first one correct, the middle one wrong, the third one correct? Like look at that and recognize what are those question stems, right? That give you the idea that it's over the rhetorical situation. Those are all like audience, anything we know about the speaker, the exegents, right? The like historical context. Those are all questions about the rhetorical situation. So what is it in here that you could recognize, okay, these are rhetorical situation questions. Now, if you get them all wrong, if you got 13, 14, and 15 wrong, okay, then we need to look at that and go, okay, what are the question stems in there that I got wrong, right? But look at how often it happened, right? That multiple question types were asked together. That I think is interesting. So, a couple of things when you're going through your analysis on this one. Like I said, 1, pick the ones that you narrowed it down and you chose the wrong one. Also pick the ones where your first choice was correct and then you changed your mind and you chose another answer, right? How many times did you do that? Because then you're second guessing yourself. That's what they want you to do, right? Then you're going to look at, so this number here is huge. How many questions did you narrow down and choose the distractor or the wrong answer, right? Instead of the other answer. This number is huge for us. How many questions did you miss bubble? We'll look at that in a minute. If your percentages don't match my percentages and they're off by more than 1, I had somebody like, oh, I'm off 1. What I have in there, I didn't grade it by hand, the computer graded it, so it's correct. If there's more, I had somebody earlier that was like, I did my calculations and I got 62%. You have 44%. I go look at it. Yep, I had 44%. She misbubbled like 9. Right? So how many did you misbubble? Meaning you had it marked correct in your packet and then you misbubbled the wrong answer. Those are easily picked up. You may have 0, which is fine. And then what are the question stems that you tend to miss most? Are they questions that have to do anything with audience questions? There's one question in the whole like rhetorical analysis ones that have to do with the audience. There's one. So if you miss that, screw it. Like you know that when you get to that audience one that you don't do well on that. What you know is you know not to just totally skip it, but just not to spend an extended amount of time on it. Right? That's what we're looking at. I'm never telling you to just skip it and guess. Ever, ever. We should never, ever, ever, ever be just guessing randomly. Unless you run out of time, I would say at most 3 or 4. You should not be randomly guessing more than 3 or 4. And in that 3 or 4, that should be the last like 20 seconds of the test. Up until then, you should be using every single minute to find the questions that you can get correct. And you should only be working within like one passage, right? You should not leave a passage until you have all those questions answered. Even if that point you just narrow it down, you just take your best guess between the narrowed down. You can, in almost every situation, narrow down your answer choices some way, somehow. All right, take a minute to look at passage number 1 with the questions and ask me questions about passage number 1 and those questions so we can look at that one quickly and see if there's anything in there that we can talk about to use for our advantage. looking at that passage and those questions, what questions do you have? Now, here's the thing. Looking, like, kind of reaching into the groups that I'm involved with and listening to people talk about and doing a little research about our test. Our old multiple choice, our old test, we would say at least one passage will be pre-20th century, right? And that was either one in rhetorical analysis, like the rhetorical analysis prompt, or in the multiple choice. Now, what we're hearing is that in multiple choice, it will be, the two passages will be modern, will be 20th century. That doesn't help you because this was 20th century. 20th century does not mean easy, right? As we can tell from some of our passages. So, what do you see in there? What questions do you have?
Since I read this really quickly, and
Like the passage really quickly?
yeah, I read it quickly.
Yeah.
And the language was like, it was just really wordy. I didn't really understand.
Okay, time out. Don't say wordy because our whole class is about words. So it's not wordy. There are words in it, and there's a lot of words. I mean, everything we read is wordy. It has complex structure, yeah. So, and that's going to be like that. We tend to see that more with like pre-20th century passages, but that's what I'm saying. Like, this is going to be a little bit more modern. So let's have a strategy of how to read, right? One, if we do the writing portion first and we pick up an extra 6 minutes, then we can slow down a little bit and give us 3 or 4 minutes to read the passage, right? Which will help. However, I will tell you, when you get into this and you get into multiple choice and it's sitting like this, right? Before I start to read a passage for the first time, so this is question number 1, new passage, right? I'm going to quickly look at the questions that are on this page. What do you notice about the questions that are on this page?
Give you where you can find the text.
What do you notice about that?
It's chronological.
Stop giving me answers. Look at 1 through 4 and tell me, what do you notice about those first 4 questions?
They're all in the first paragraph.
Yep. They're all the first paragraph. So on this page, I wouldn't even waste my time reading the full passage because these first 4 questions, and I can't tell you that this will happen every time you start a new passage, right? But even if my first 3 are from the first paragraph, I would only read the first paragraph and answer the first 3. Right? Unless it is like an author's purpose for the entire passage, which might be your first one, which I would skip until I've gotten through all of them. These are all from the first paragraph, which means I would only read that first. Then I would turn the page, right? And I would quickly notice that the next page, second paragraph, second and third, third and first 2, and then 5th. Now I would read through paragraph 5. Does that make sense? And I don't know, I mean, listen, if you're scoring well right now, like if you're scoring 60% or above, don't change anything. Except for what we can find in, narrowing it down to 2. Don't change your strategy. If you are below that or you are running out of time, what I might do with this is just, if I notice, like I've read paragraph 1 and I notice this is first, third through third, I would probably read through through paragraph 2 and paragraph 3, answer those 3, then read 4 and 5, then read that one. Does that make sense? I mean, and then you go here, there's another paragraph 5, there's another paragraph 5, there's another paragraph 5, and then there's a relationship, the final sentence. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions from paragraph 5, 4 questions from paragraph 1. So I might, because there's not a full a full passage question, I might just read it that way. It's another strategy you can try. Does that make sense? What else? Especially if you're a slow reader. Like, I'm a slow reader, so I would probably try that just because I know that, like, if I'm rushing to read it, then I know I'm not going to get the questions right. But if I know I can spend 5-6 minutes on paragraph 1 because I have 4 questions plus the little bit of extra time that I saved, then I can spend a little bit more time in that. What else?
I also feel like my brain was a little tired because I'm re-looking at these and I'm like, that answer's so obvious, but I didn't pick it because, I don't know, I guess once I got to rhetorical analysis, my eyes were like crossed.
Okay, so that's a couple other things that you need to recognize too. Like, in whatever order you worked in the test, do you see a trend of when you turn the page, you miss the first one? Or at the last question on each page, did you miss it? Or within each passage, did you miss them in the middle, right? So like in the first rhetorical analysis passage, did you get the beginning ones right and the end ones right, but missed quite a few in the middle? It's because your brain fades out. So if you see that, then you recognize, okay, I need to recognize when I'm starting to fade out, take a minute, gather myself and refocus. Because if there's ones that you're like, man, I should have got that, like that was an easy one. Why didn't I get that one correct? Those are ones that we need to recognize, right? Same thing as the test as a whole. If you started with writing and that worked for you and then you got to rhetorical analysis, you know that once you get to rhetorical analysis, you really need to focus because those are tougher questions, right? So some people are like, oh, well, I should start with rhetorical analysis because those are tougher. You're just starting the test. You haven't even gotten in your groove yet, right? At least if you can get in the groove somehow. Now, again, whatever you got, if you got 60% or above, then don't change whatever it is that you did. The mock exam is not the time to change something that has already worked for you. If you're 55% and below, then let's tweak a couple of things and see what we can fix, right? That's the strategy that I want us to look at.
So are we going to get our scantrons back?
I'll give you your scantrons back in a minute. All right. A couple of the things that I want to look at. Question 2, even though like it's an audience question, I think it is a little bit more difficult. Let's say you get to it and you read through all the answers and you're like, I got nothing. I don't even know how to narrow it down, right? Your next strategy, and I have to see more of our new test to see how often this happens. But in the multiple choice, if you can't narrow it down at all, then I need you to try to find groups of answers. Okay? I'll show you a couple of ways to group answers. So 1, looking at question number 2, like what can he assume about the audience, right? The audience is familiar. That's a positive thing. They view the phrase with skepticism. That's a negative thing. They hold individual freedom in high regard. That's a positive thing. They view individual freedom as both a gift and a problem. That's a distractor because that's exactly what he said in the content or in the passage, right? So if he assumes that about his audience, he can't say that. Like he wouldn't say that again, right? So that one I know is going to be out. They are probably unfamiliar. That's a negative. So now I can group my answers. So I have 2 groups. One group is in, obviously one group is out. So what you want to do is there anyone in one of those groups where you can say, absolutely, that's wrong? And then if you can, then you can mark out that group. Does that make sense? So like for me, I don't think there's anything that he said that shows that he believes the audience is wrong, or that he believes that the audience has the wrong idea of something, right? I feel like in this passage, he's looking at trying to prove what we think we already believe, but we don't really show, right? Like that last sentence of, there's no such thing as a free lunch and united we stand, like the contradiction that we lead in America, right? So I would say I would mark these two out because they're grouped together. And then like even for number 3, endorse, explain, rebutes it by offering a counter example, denigrates as negative, he elevates it by relating it. So like for me, I look at this and go, okay, what's the difference between endorsing it and explaining it? Like you have to do both, like adopting it and elaborating it, right? Like if you endorse something, you can't just go, yep. You have to explain why you do, right? So those two I would group together. Denigrates it. I don't think there's anything that he is like trashing, right? So I would mark that one out. So I would say like these two would be my last two that I could look at. So if you get to where you don't naturally have a narrow down of 2 or 3, quickly read through the answers and see if there's anything in there that they have in common. So for example, looking at this relationship one, right? Question 6. You notice all the questions, line of reasoning or answers, the first 3 all have a line of reasoning. How do I group them? Those are grouped together because they all have the idea of a line of reasoning into each other. D is drawing a conclusion. E is explaining. So there's no grouping there. Also, though, they also know what kind of testers you are. How many of you had the same answer, like A, and then you chose A for the third one, and you go, it can't be A again. Like I've got to choose the other answer. It happened multiple times on this one. Am I going to say it's going to happen in May? I don't know. I'm just saying, out of the tests that they've created that I've looked at, that's happened every test. So don't convince, but they know that about you. They know that y'all are overthinkers and that you're going to think yourself right out of a correct answer. That's why they have the distractors in there. That's why they have multiple answers with the same answer choice as the correct answer. Because you're going, I'm not putting A. I'm between A and C. It can't be A again. I'm going with C. You just talked yourself out of the right answer. So don't let that be a reason. Also, if you can't narrow it down, don't choose the longest answer. Because whoever told you that, that's not correct either. The longest answer is always the right one. No, it's not.
It's right in every other subject. It's not.
It typically,
It's always the shortest.
in like every other subject, that like somehow works, but not this one.
Not here. They know you're going to overcomplicate things.
They're gonna make the test A, B, 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 C, C.
No. They won't do that. True false would be my worst nightmare.
Oh God.
Oh Lord, that would be
So, other questions you have? So, as you're analyzing again, when you are choosing which ones to do, your first ones, and I don't know, like if I would maybe star the ones that your second choice was the correct answer, right? So that you kind of have an idea of when you go in, which ones you're going to choose. But I would absolutely choose those first. Then I would probably choose the ones, like if I missed a series of questions within a row, like 13, 14, 15, I would choose those if you missed them in groupings like that. But also be mindful of looking at the ones you missed within like one skill category and look at the question stems. Out of the ones that you missed in a like skill category, did you miss some with the same question stem? Meaning like the same like idea, like the relationship between, right? So if you can notice those, then you jot that down below as well, because when you get to the test, not that you need to pay more attention to those, you just know you don't need to spend as much time on those because you always get them wrong. So I'd rather you spend more time on another one that you like narrowed it down to 2 and you had a good reason to kind of overthink that one, rather than 2 that you just honestly had no clue about from the same skill category, from the same sentence stem that you continually get wrong. Does that make sense? All right, so let me show you the next magical thing that I have for you. You ready? This is magic. See? Watch. Abracadabra.
Wow. Well, that's pretty
Notice.
wacky.
Did it again.
It's front and back. Meaning that when you pick these up, you do not need one per question. I pressed the magic button and made them front and back, just as I have done every other time that we don't pay attention. So, take how many ever you have to do, not how many you missed, but how many ever you have to do per category, and divide it by 2. Good job. All right. All right. This is here. You may come up and grab these. I probably still need to go steal some from Word Up. Count how many you need. You probably will not have time next week to work on this at all. All right? If you need any motivation for your grade, it's in the grade book right now. It's actually calculated into your average. All right? All right. Y'all may grab those. Friends online, I am done.
I just don't know. Mark.
There were not any sweatshirts.
No, you're fine.
I know. They were all so
Were they all-
expensive, and they
I
were
know,
all
they're
gone.
$55.
All of
I
the
know.
sizes were gone when I was there.
Were
I
they?
didn't even get a sweatshirt
Yeah.
because it was either like an extra small or like
Yeah,
An
we had
extra
all, and they
large.
were still $55 then.
Yeah.
With it, yeah.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
even worth it, yeah. Victoria, we've already finished for the day.